When Travis Kelce called Taylor Swift my Taylor during his podcast recording, she was listening live from their Nashville home and felt something unexpected happen in her chest. But what she told him when he got home would reveal just how deeply those two simple words had affected her heart. Sometimes the smallest words carry the biggest meaning. This is how two words changed everything Taylor Swift thought she knew about love. February 25th, 2026, 2:47 p.m. 3 days ago, Taylor Swift was curled up in the reading nook of their Nashville home, laptop balanced on her knees, wearing Travis's old Chiefs hoodie and fuzzy socks. Wednesday afternoons had become sacred in their household. New Heights recording time, which meant Taylor got 2 uninterrupted hours to work on lyrics while listening to her fiancé's voice through her headphones. She developed this ritual over the past year of tuning in live to Travis and Jason's podcast recordings. Not because she needed to monitor what he was saying, but because there was something comforting about hearing his laugh, his easy banter with his brother, the way his voice got animated when he talked about football or family. Today's guest was Chris Stapleton, and Taylor found herself smiling as she listened to Travis geek out over country music. She'd been the one to introduce him to some of Stapleton's deeper cuts, and hearing him reference their conversations made her heart warm. "You know what's crazy about the country world?" Travis was saying, his voice coming through her headphones with that familiar enthusiasm. "I've talked to Taylor, my Taylor, about this a few times." Taylor's fingers froze over her keyboard. "She grew up in that country world in Nashville in high school and coming up," Travis continued, completely unaware of the effect those two words had just had on his fiancée. "She was underneath a lot of these big country singers, and she raves about how together they are and how they maneuver on tours and stuff like that." But Taylor had stopped listening to the rest. She rewound the audio on her laptop, playing it back. "I've talked to Taylor, my Taylor, about this." There it was again, my Taylor. Something about the way he'd said it, so naturally, so unconsciously, like it was the most obvious thing in the world, made something shift inside her chest. She pressed pause on the podcast and sat back against the window seat cushions, trying to understand why two simple words had hit her so hard. She tried to focus back on the conversation when she resumed the audio, but her mind kept circling back to those words. When the recording wrapped up an hour later, Taylor found herself pacing around their living room, unable to settle. She tried working on lyrics, but everything she wrote seemed to circle back to the same theme. By the time she heard Travis's truck in the driveway at 4:30, Taylor had worked herself into a state that she couldn't quite explain. She was excited and emotional and slightly overwhelmed, all over something that probably meant nothing to anyone else in the world. "Hey babe," Travis called out as he walked through the front door, keys jingling as he hung them on the hook by the entrance. "How was your afternoon? Did you get any good writing done?" "I listened to your podcast," Taylor said from the couch, where she'd finally managed to settle with her guitar. "Oh yeah?" Travis kicked off his shoes and padded into the living room in his socks. "What did you think of Stapleton? Guy's a legend, right?" "Travis," Taylor said, setting her guitar aside, "you called me my Taylor." Travis paused in the middle of pulling off his Chiefs hoodie, looking at her with slightly confused amusement. "I called you what? When you were talking about country music in Nashville, you said I've talked to Taylor, my Taylor, about this. You called me your Taylor." Travis finished pulling his hoodie over his head, his hair sticking up in about 15 different directions. "I mean, yeah, you are my Taylor. But you said it like..." Taylor tried to find the right words. "You said it like it meant something." Travis moved to sit beside her on the couch, reaching over to smooth down his unruly hair. "It does mean something. You're my person, my Taylor, as opposed to all the other Taylors running around who aren't mine." Taylor felt her eyes getting watery, which was ridiculous because this wasn't sad. It was the opposite of sad. "Why are you getting emotional?" Travis asked gently, reaching over to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "Did I say something wrong?" "No, you said something right," Taylor said, leaning into his touch. It hit me in a way I wasn't expecting." "How so?" Taylor pulled her legs up underneath her, turning to face him fully. This was the conversation she'd been trying to have in her head all afternoon. "Travis, for most of my life, I've been everyone's Taylor. The fans' Taylor, the media's Taylor, the industry's Taylor. Even in relationships, I've often felt like I was being the version of Taylor that person needed, you know? America's sweetheart, the music industry, a global superstar, Travis's girlfriend, Travis's fiancé. I've been public property for so long." Travis nodded, his expression getting more serious as he began to understand where she was going with this. But when you said my Taylor today, it felt different. It felt like you were talking about a version of me that only exists for you. Not Taylor Swift the pop star, but just me. The Taylor who wears your clothes and listens to your podcast and knows how you take your coffee. The Taylor who's not performing for anyone, who doesn't have to be on or perfect or anything other than just yours. Travis was quiet for a moment, processing what she'd said. When he spoke, his voice was softer than it had been before. Listen, Tay, you've always been my Taylor, long before the ring, before we even said, I love you. From the first time we had a real conversation, you became my Taylor. Not the superstar, not the public figure, just you. The you that laughs at my stupid jokes and falls asleep during movies and gets excited about finding a new coffee shop. Taylor felt tears spilling over now, and she didn't try to stop them. I know that makes me sound crazy, getting emotional over 2 words. It doesn't make you sound crazy, Travis interrupted. It makes you sound like someone who spent a lot of years belonging to everyone except the person who matters most. He shifted closer to her on the couch, pulling her into his arms. But here's what I need you to know. You don't just belong to me because we're getting married. You don't belong to me at all, actually. You choose to be mine, and I choose to be yours, and that's what makes it special. Taylor pressed her face against his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with the faint smell of the recording studio. When you become Taylor Kelce, Travis continued, his voice rumbling against her ear, you're not losing Taylor Swift. You're not becoming less than you are now. You're just adding another layer to who you've always been. You'll be my wife, and you'll still be your own person. You'll be the Taylor who shares my name, and you'll still be the Taylor who sells out stadiums and writes songs that change people's lives. Taylor pulled back to look at him, mascara probably smudged under her eyes, but not caring. How did you know that was something I needed to hear? Because I know you. Travis said simply. My Taylor, the one who overthinks everything and worries about losing herself in other people's expectations. The one who's been in the spotlight for so long that sometimes she forgets she's allowed to be private too. I love you, Taylor said, the words coming out more intense than she'd intended. I love you too, my Taylor. This time when he said it, Taylor felt nothing but warmth, no overwhelming emotion, no identity crisis, no fear about losing herself. Just the simple joy of being chosen by someone who saw all of her and loved both versions equally. Can I tell you something? Taylor said, settling back into his arms. Always. I've never had that before. Someone who could separate me from my career, my reputation, my public image. Someone who could love Taylor the person without needing Taylor Swift the brand. Travis ran his fingers through her hair as he considered her words. The real you is pretty easy to love. Even when I get emotional over 2 words on a podcast? Especially then. Babe, you're not crying about 2 words. You're processing what it means to be loved for exactly who you are. That's worth crying about. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Taylor curled up against Travis's side, both of them watching the late afternoon sunlight filter through their living room windows. Outside, Nashville was bustling with its usual energy, but inside their house, everything felt perfectly still. Travis, Taylor said eventually. Yeah? When we're married and people ask me what I like most about being Mrs. Kelce, I'm going to tell them it's being your Taylor, not Travis Kelce's wife, not the Taylor who married the football player, just yours. Travis pressed a kiss to the top of her head. And when people ask me what I like most about being married to Taylor Swift, I'm gonna tell them it's that she's not Taylor Swift when she's with me. She's just Taylor. My Taylor. The Taylor who listens to your podcast in your hoodies and burns toast at least twice a week and cries during insurance commercials and knows exactly what to say when you're stressed about retirement decisions. My Taylor, Travis said again, and this time the words settled over her like a warm blanket. The rest of their evening unfolded with the easy rhythm they'd developed over the past year. Travis ordered Thai food while Taylor attempted to fix her mascara. They ate dinner on the couch while watching a documentary about Antarctic penguins that Travis had been wanting to see. Taylor fell asleep halfway through, her head on his shoulder, and Travis carried her upstairs to bed without waking her. But before they went to sleep, Travis said it one more time. Good night, my Taylor. And she drifted off with those words echoing in her mind. The next morning, Travis posted a behind-the-scenes photo from the podcast recording on Instagram. Throughout Thursday and Friday, Taylor noticed that several fans had commented about his My Taylor moment. Some found it sweet, some called it possessive, some turned it into memes, but their opinions didn't matter to her anymore. Let them analyze his word choice. Let them debate what it meant or didn't mean. Let them create theories about their relationship dynamics or their upcoming wedding. Because at the end of the day, when all the noise died down and the notifications stopped buzzing, Taylor would still be exactly where she belonged. She'd be his Taylor. The only Taylor who got to see him brush his teeth in Superman pajamas and steal bites of her cereal and fall asleep with his arm thrown protectively across her waist. The only Taylor who got to build a private life with him that existed completely separate from public opinion. On Thursday evening, Taylor found herself back in the same reading nook where she'd first heard those words, working on a new song. The lyrics came easier than they had in months. You can call me crazy, call me anything you want, but when you call me yours, that's when I know I'm home. Not the girl they think they know from magazines, just your Taylor, just your everything. She didn't know if the song would ever make it onto an album. It felt too personal, too specific to this moment in her life. But writing it helped her understand what had shifted inside her chest 3 days ago. It wasn't about possession or ownership. It wasn't even really about the words themselves. It was about recognition. Travis had unconsciously told the world, and more importantly, told her, that he saw her as separate from her public identity. That he had a relationship with Taylor the person, not Taylor Swift the phenomenon. Friday brought more of the same routine. Travis had meetings about his potential retirement, and Taylor had studio time for her upcoming album, but both of their days were punctuated by small moments that reinforced what those two words meant. Travis texting her a picture of a coffee shop with the message, "Thought my Taylor might like this place." Taylor leaving a note in his gym bag that said, "Your Taylor hopes you have a great workout." Tiny acknowledgments of the private world they'd built together. Saturday, February 28th, 2026. Looking back on that Wednesday afternoon 3 days ago, Taylor realizes that "my Taylor" wasn't just an offhand comment during a podcast recording. It was Travis unconsciously telling the world exactly how he sees her, not as a trophy or an acquisition or a famous girlfriend, but as his person, his Taylor, the woman who chose to build a life with him not because of who he is in public, but because of who he is in private. This morning, as she sits in the same spot where she first heard those words, Taylor understands something that took her years to learn. She spent so much of her career fighting to be seen as more than just her music, more than just her relationships, more than just the headlines. With Travis, she doesn't have to fight for that recognition. He just sees her, the real her, the private her, his Taylor. In less than 4 months, when they walk down the aisle on June 13th, she won't just be marrying Travis Kelce, the NFL star. She'll be marrying the man who saw her as his Taylor long before the world started paying attention to their love story. And maybe that's what real love is, not being someone's everything, but being their someone, not belonging to them, but choosing them, not losing yourself in another person, but finding the version of yourself that only exists when you're with them, the version of herself that Travis calls my Taylor, the version she's learned to love most. What do you think about the way Travis refers to Taylor? Have you ever had someone call you theirs in a way that felt like home instead of ownership? Share your thoughts in the comments, because sometimes the smallest words carry the biggest meaning. If this story reminded you that true love isn't about changing who you are, but about being seen for exactly who you've always been, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the private moments that define our favorite relationships.